The dust kicked up under her boots as Adelaide Reynolds stepped off the stagecoach in Rawlins, Wyoming. And Yates Randall felt his heart stop dead in his chest as he watched from across the street. 3 years had passed since the morning he woke to find her side of the bed cold, her clothes gone, and nothing but the faint scent of lavender to prove she had ever existed at all. Now here she stood in the harsh September sunlight of 1882, wearing a traveling dress the color of deep wine, her dark hair pinned beneath a sensible hat, and he realized with sudden fury that she was even more beautiful than he remembered. Yates had been carrying feed sacks into the general store when he spotted her, and he dropped the burlap so hard that flour exploded in a white cloud around his boots. The store owner, old Mr. Patterson, started to complain but stopped when he saw the look on Yates's face. Everyone in Rawlins knew the story. The cattle rancher who had been engaged to the schoolteacher, the wedding planned for spring of 1879, and then the inexplicable disappearance that had turned Yates from a laughing, easy-going man into someone hard and closed off. Adelaide must have felt his stare because her head turned, and their eyes met across the dusty expanse of Main Street. Even from this distance, he could see her face go pale. She clutched her small traveling bag tighter, and for a moment he thought she might bolt right back onto that stagecoach. But she did not. Instead, she lifted her chin in that stubborn way he remembered so well and started walking toward the boarding house. That simple act of defiance snapped something inside him. Yates left the feed sacks where they lay and strode across the street, his boots hitting the packed earth with purpose. He intercepted her before she reached the boarding house steps, blocking her path with his tall frame. Up close, he could see the shadows under her eyes, the way her hands trembled slightly on the handle of her bag. Adelaide. His voice came out rougher than he intended, years of hurt and confusion packed into those 4 syllables. Yates. She met his eyes and he saw something flicker there, guilt perhaps, or fear, or something else entirely. I know you have questions. Questions. He let out a bitter laugh. You vanished without a word, without a single damned word, Adelaide. I thought you were dead in a ditch somewhere. I rode for 3 days searching every road out of town. The sheriff sent telegrams to every city within 500 miles. Your students cried for weeks, and you have the nerve to stand here and say I have questions. A small crowd had begun to gather, townspeople pretending to go about their business while obviously listening. Adelaide glanced around, spots of color rising in her cheeks. Could we speak somewhere private? Why? You did not think privacy mattered 3 years ago when you humiliated me in front of this entire town. Please. The word came out soft, almost broken, and despite everything, despite the anger that had sustained him through countless lonely nights, Yates felt himself weakening. He had loved this woman with everything he had. Part of him, the part he tried so hard to bury, still did. He jerked his head toward the alley between the boarding house and the milliner's shop. Adelaide followed him into the shade, setting down her bag with careful precision. For a long moment they simply stood there, the sounds of the town muffled by the buildings on either side. A horse whinnied somewhere. A woman called out a greeting to a neighbor. Normal life continuing while Yates felt like his world was fracturing all over again. I had to leave, Adelaide said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. I had no choice. Everyone has a choice. You chose not to trust me, not to tell me whatever trouble you were in. You chose to let me believe the worst. What did you believe? She looked up at him, and her eyes were wet. At first, that something terrible had happened to you, that someone had taken you or hurt you. Then, when no body turned up, when there was no ransom note, no sign of violence, I started to think maybe you just did not want to marry me, that you got scared and ran. It was not like that. Then what was it like? He stepped closer, and she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. Tell me, Adelaide, you owe me that much. She took a shaky breath. My brother found me, Daniel. He came to Rawlins looking for me, and he threatened to kill you if I did not leave with him that very night. Yates felt like he had been punched in the stomach. Your brother. You told me you had no family. I lied. The admission seemed to cost her. I ran away from home when I was 17, from Boston. My father was a cruel man, Yates. He drank, and when he drank, he became violent. My mother died when I was 15, and after that, there was no one to stop him. Daniel, my older brother, he was just like our father. Worse, maybe. When I turned 17, my father tried to marry me off to one of his business associates, a man in his 50s who already had a reputation for beating his first wife. God, Adelaide. I stole money from my father's desk and took the first train west. I changed my name, though I kept the same initials so I would remember to answer to it. I became a school teacher because it was respectable work that could take me anywhere. I thought I had escaped. I thought I could build a new life, and then I met you, and for the first time since my mother died, I was happy. Truly happy. Yates wanted to reach for her but kept his hands clenched at his sides. Why did you not tell me any of this? Because I was ashamed. Because I was afraid you would see me differently, and because I genuinely believed I was free of them. She wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. But Daniel found me. I still do not know how. He showed up at the schoolhouse one afternoon after the children had left. He told me our father had died and left debts, terrible debts, and that he had been looking for me to help settle them. I told him I had no money, that I owed him nothing, and that he should leave. What did he do? He followed me home. He saw me with you, Yates. He saw the way you kissed me goodnight on the porch. And he told me that if I did not come back to Boston with him, if I did not help him with the debts, he would kill you. He described in detail how he would do it. He said he would make it look like an accident or like cattle thieves had done it, and that I would have to live knowing your death was my fault. Yates felt rage building in his chest, hot and fierce. You should have told me. We could have handled him together. He was my brother. He knew things about me, about our family. He said if I told anyone, he would ruin me. He would tell everyone in Rawlins that I was a liar, that I had stolen from my father, that I was probably wanted by the law. Even if none of it stuck, even if you believed me, my reputation would have been destroyed. I could never teach again. And I was so afraid, Yates, so terribly afraid that he would hurt you. So you just left. I left you a note. She looked stricken. I wrote you a letter explaining everything. I put it under your pillow the night before, after you fell asleep. Did you not find it? Yates shook his head slowly, a terrible suspicion forming. There was no note, Adelaide. I tore apart that house looking for any explanation. It was there. I know it was there because I placed it myself and checked 3 times to make sure it would not slip away. Understanding dawned on her face. Daniel. He must have come back before you woke. He must have been watching the house, and when I left with him, he went in and took it. He wanted to make sure I could never come back, that you would hate me too much. I could never hate you. The words escaped before Yates could stop them, and they hung in the air between them, true and raw and vulnerable. Adelaide's face crumpled. I hated myself enough for both of us. I went back to Boston with Daniel, and it was every bit as awful as I remembered. Worse, because now I knew what freedom tasted like, what love felt like. He made me work in a factory during the day and serve drinks in a tavern at night, taking every cent I earned to pay off Father's debts. He watched me constantly, never letting me out of his sight long enough to run again. How did you get away? He got himself killed 6 months ago. A bar fight that went too far. Someone stabbed him and he bled out before a doctor could be found. There was no grief in her voice, only exhaustion. It took me this long to save enough money for the journey back. I sold everything I had, took every extra shift I could, and I came back because I needed you to know the truth. I needed you to know that I never stopped loving you, not for a single day, and that leaving you was the hardest thing I have ever done. Yates stood there, absorbing everything she had told him. 3 years of anger and hurt warred with the relief of finally understanding, the grief for what they had lost, and underneath it all, the ember of love that had never quite died no matter how much he tried to smother it. "You should have trusted me," he said finally. "You should have known I would protect you, that we could have faced him together. I know that now. But I was 22 years old and terrified, and I had spent my whole life learning that the only person I could rely on was myself. I made the wrong choice, Yates. I know I did. But I made it out of love, out of desperate fear that I would lose you to violence." He studied her face, seeing the truth written in every line, every shadow. "Did he hurt you? Daniel in Boston, did he hurt you?" She hesitated, then nodded slightly. "Sometimes. When the money came in too slow, or when I said something he did not like. Nothing terrible, nothing I could not heal from." Yates felt his control snap. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight against his chest, and she collapsed into him with a sob that sounded like it had been held back for years. They stood there in the alley, clutching each other while she cried, and he pressed his face into her hair, breathing in the lavender scent he had never forgotten. "I am so sorry," she whispered against his shirt. "I am so sorry. I know." His voice was rough. "I know you are." They stood like that until her tears subsided, until the sun shifted overhead and the shadows lengthened. Finally, Adelaide pulled back, wiping her face with her handkerchief. "I do not expect forgiveness. I do not expect anything from you, Yates. I just needed you to know the truth. I needed you to understand that it was never about not loving you. It was always about loving you too much to risk your life. What will you do now? I do not know. Find work somewhere, I suppose. I do not imagine the school will want me back, not after what happened. Maybe I will head further west to California or Oregon, start over again. Or you could stay." The words came out before he fully thought them through, but once they were spoken, Yates realized he meant them. "You could stay in Rawlins, stay with me." Hope and fear chased across her face. "Yates, I cannot ask that of you, after everything I put you through." "You are not asking. I am offering." He took her hand, feeling the calluses that had not been there 3 years ago, evidence of the hard labor she had endured. "I am not saying everything is forgiven just like that. I am not saying we go back to how things were, but I am saying I want to try. I want us to try again if you are willing. The whole town thinks I abandoned you. The whole town can hear the truth. We will tell them together." He squeezed her hand. "Adelaide, I spent 3 years trying to forget you. I worked myself half to death on the ranch, took on extra hands, expanded the herd, anything to stay busy enough that I would not think about you. It did not work. You were always there in every sunset, every spring morning, every moment I should have been happy but felt hollow instead. I thought about you every single day." Her voice broke. "Every morning I woke up in that terrible boarding house in Boston. Every night I fell into bed exhausted, you were the last thought I had. I would remember the way you laughed, the way you kissed me, the way you made me feel safe. And it hurt so much, Yates. It hurt so much that sometimes I wished I had never met you, just so I would not know what I was missing. But you came back. I came back because a life without you is not really living. Even if you turned me away, even if you told me you hated me, I had to try. I had to know if there was any chance at all." Yates cupped her face in his hands, tilting her chin up. "There is more than a chance. There is a certainty as far as I am concerned. You are the only woman I have ever loved, Adelaide Reynolds, the only woman I ever will love. And I am not letting you go again, not without a fight. I am not going anywhere." She pressed her hand over his, holding it against her cheek. "Not ever again, I promise you that." He kissed her then, in the alley between the boarding house and the milliner's shop, with half the town probably watching from various windows and doorways. It was a kiss that tasted of salt from her tears, of dust from the road, of 3 years of longing and loss. It was a kiss that felt like coming home. When they finally broke apart, Adelaide was smiling through fresh tears. "What do we do now?" "Now," Yates picked up her traveling bag. "Now I take you home, to the ranch where you should have been all along. People will talk. Let them talk. We will get married as soon as we can arrange it. Tomorrow, if possible. I am not waiting another 3 years, Adelaide. I am not waiting another 3 days." She laughed, the sound watery but genuine. "Tomorrow is very fast. I have waited long enough." He held out his arm and she took it, letting him lead her back onto Main Street. The townspeople did stare, conversation stopping mid-sentence as they emerged from the alley. Yates met their gazes steadily, daring anyone to say a word. "Mrs. Patterson from the general store was the first to approach, her round face concerned. "Yates, is everything all right?" "Everything is fine, madam. Better than fine, actually. You remember Adelaide Reynolds, of course." Mrs. Patterson looked between them uncertainly. "We all thought." "That is, we heard." "You heard wrong." Yates's voice was firm but not unkind. There were circumstances beyond Adelaide's control that forced her to leave. Those circumstances are now resolved and she has returned. We will be getting married as soon as arrangements can be made, and I would appreciate it if you would spread that news as efficiently as you spread all the other news in this town. Mrs. Patterson had the grace to look abashed, but her eyes were warm. "Well, that is wonderful news, Yates, truly. Adelaide, dear, welcome back. I am sure you must be exhausted from your journey. Do you need anything?" "Just rest, thank you." Adelaide's voice was soft but steady. "Yates is taking me to the ranch, of course, of course." Mrs. Patterson was already turning to call to her husband in the store. "Henry, come out here. You will never believe it. Adelaide is back and she and Yates are getting married." Word spread through Rawlins like wildfire, just as Yates had known it would. By the time they reached the edge of town where his horse was tethered outside the general store, half a dozen people had stopped them to offer congratulations or welcome Adelaide back. Some looked skeptical, others curious, but most seemed genuinely happy. Yates had been well liked before Adelaide left, and the town had mourned with him when she disappeared. Perhaps they were simply relieved to see him smile again. The ride to the ranch took about 40 minutes, with Adelaide seated in front of Yates on his big roan gelding. She fit against him perfectly, just as she always had, her back pressed to his chest and his arms around her to hold the reins. Neither of them spoke much during the ride, content to simply be together. But Yates noticed the way she relaxed incrementally as they left town behind, as the wide Wyoming sky opened up above them and the grasslands stretched out in every direction. The ranch looked much as it had when she left, the main house a sturdy wooden structure with a wide porch and stone chimney. Yates had built it himself, with help from his ranch hands, designing every room with Adelaide in mind. The barn stood behind the house, freshly painted red, and beyond that were the pastures where his cattle grazed, fat and healthy. It was a good spread, one he was proud of, and he felt Adelaide stiffen slightly as they approached. "Yates, this is larger than I remember." I expanded. "Kept myself busy." He dismounted and helped her down, his hands lingering at her waist. "There are 2 more hands working here now, Tom and his son Jesse. Good men, they live in the bunkhouse beyond the barn. It is beautiful. It is yours." He took her hand and led her up the porch steps. "It was always meant to be yours, Adelaide. Every board I hammered, every fence post I set, I was thinking about our life together." The inside of the house was clean but sparse, lacking the feminine touches Adelaide had always talked about adding. Yates saw her take it all in, the sturdy furniture, the stone fireplace, the kitchen with its iron stove. She moved to the window that looked out over the pastures, her fingers trailing along the sill. "You kept the curtains I made. I kept everything of yours. It is all in the bedroom in a trunk. I could not bear to get rid of any of it." He came up behind her, not touching but close enough that she could feel his warmth. "I know this is moving fast. If you want to stay in town at the boarding house until we are married, I understand." She turned to face him. "I have spent 3 years away from you, Yates. I do not want to spend another night apart if I do not have to. Besides, we are getting married tomorrow, are we not? What difference does one night make to the gossips? Tomorrow it is, then. I will ride into town in the morning and speak to the preacher. We can have a simple ceremony, just us and a few witnesses." "That sounds perfect." She reached up and touched his face, her fingers gentle on his jaw. "I do not need anything fancy, Yates. I just need you." He caught her hand and kissed her palm. "You have me. You have always had me." They spent the rest of the day relearning each other, talking through everything that had happened in their 3 years apart. Yates told her about expanding the ranch, about the hard winters and dry summers, about the loneliness that had settled into his bones. Adelaide told him about Boston, about the factory work that left her hands bleeding, about the tavern where men grabbed at her, and Daniel watched to make sure she did not run. She told him about the tiny room she had rented after Daniel died, about saving every penny and dreaming of this moment. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Yates made dinner, simple fare of beans and bacon and cornbread. They ate at the table he had built, and Adelaide laughed at his cooking, saying it was terrible but she loved it anyway. After dinner, they sat on the porch and watched the stars come out, one by one, until the sky was a blanket of light above them. "I used to look at the stars in Boston," Adelaide said softly, "and wonder if you were looking at them too, if somehow we were connected, even across all those miles." "I did the same thing." Yates pulled her closer, his arm around her shoulders. "Every night for 3 years. We lost so much time. Then we will make up for it. We have the rest of our lives, Adelaide." She turned in his arms and kissed him, slow and deep and full of promise. When they finally went inside, Yates showed her to the bedroom, the same bedroom they would have shared as husband and wife 3 years ago. The trunk with her belongings sat at the foot of the bed, exactly where he had said it would be. "I cannot believe you kept everything. I told you." "I could not let go." He opened the trunk, revealing the dresses she had left behind, the books she had loved, the little trinkets she had collected. Underneath it all was a small wooden box. Yates lifted it out and opened it, showing her the engagement ring he had given her, the simple gold band with the tiny diamond he had saved for months to afford. Adelaide's eyes filled with tears. "You kept this too." "I kept it all. I kept hope, even when it seemed foolish." He took the ring out and held it up. "This still belongs to you if you want it. Of course I want it." She held out her hand and he slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, just as it had 3 years ago. "I never should have taken it off. You are wearing it now. That is all that matters." They held each other as the night deepened around them, and for the first time in 3 years, Yates felt completely at peace. Adelaide was home. She was safe. And tomorrow she would be his wife. True to his word, Yates rode into Rawlins at first light the next morning. He found Preacher Matthews at the church, preparing for Sunday services, and explained the situation. The preacher, a kind man in his 60s, agreed immediately to perform the ceremony that afternoon. "I am happy for you, son," he said, clapping Yates on the shoulder. "I have watched you suffer these past few years. It is good to see joy return to your face." "Thank you, sir. That means a lot. Will you be wanting a reception? The ladies of the church would be happy to prepare something. Just something small would be wonderful." Yates had not thought that far ahead, but he knew Adelaide would appreciate the gesture. "Nothing too elaborate. Leave it to us. Bring your bride to the church at 3 o'clock. We will take care of the rest." Yates's next stop was the general store, where he purchased fabric for a new dress for Adelaide, along with flowers and a few other supplies. Mrs. Patterson helped him pick out a bolt of soft blue cotton that would complement Adelaide's dark hair and eyes. "She will look beautiful, Mrs. Patterson assured him. "Though I imagine she could wear burlap and you would still think she was the prettiest thing you ever saw." "You are not wrong, madam." Yates paid for his purchases and headed back to the ranch, eager to tell Adelaide the news. He found her in the kitchen, attempting to make bread with mixed results. There was flour on her nose and in her hair, and she looked so adorably frustrated that Yates could not help but laugh. "It is not funny," she protested, but she was smiling. "I was a decent cook once, but 3 years in Boston, eating boarding house food and tavern scraps, I have lost my touch. We will relearn together." He kissed the flour off her nose. "Besides, I have news. We are getting married at 3 o'clock this afternoon at the church. Preacher Matthews has agreed to perform the ceremony, and the church ladies are preparing a small reception." Adelaide's face lit up. "Truly, this afternoon? I told you I was not waiting, and I brought you something." He presented her with the bolt of fabric and the flowers. "I thought you might want a new dress for the occasion. Mrs. Patterson said you could use her sewing machine if you need it, or she would be happy to help." "Yates, this is lovely." Adelaide buried her face in the flowers, breathing in their scent. "You did not have to do all this. I wanted to. I want everything to be perfect for you." They spent the next few hours in a flurry of preparation. Adelaide did indeed go into town to use Mrs. Patterson's sewing machine, and with the older woman's help, she fashioned a simple but elegant dress that hugged her figure and brought out the color of her eyes. Yates bathed and shaved, put on his best suit, the one he had planned to wear for their wedding 3 years ago. It still fit, though it was a bit tighter in the shoulders from the hard work he had done. At 2:45, they rode into town together, Adelaide seated side saddle behind Yates, her arms around his waist. The church was fuller than Yates had expected. Word had spread, as it always did in a small town, and it seemed half of Rawlins had turned out to witness the wedding. He recognized familiar faces, people who had supported him through the dark times, and felt a swell of gratitude. Preacher Matthews stood at the front of the church, beaming. Mrs. Patterson and several other ladies had decorated the space with wildflowers and ribbons, giving it a festive air. As Yates and Adelaide walked down the aisle together, he heard murmurs of approval, saw smiles on the faces around them. The ceremony itself was brief but heartfelt. They recited traditional vows, promising to love and honor each other through all the days of their lives. When Preacher Matthews pronounced them husband and wife, Yates kissed Adelaide with all the passion and relief and joy he felt, and the church erupted in applause. The reception was held in the church hall, with tables laden with food the ladies had prepared, cake and sandwiches and pies. People came up to congratulate them, to welcome Adelaide back, to shake Yates's hand and tell him they were happy for him. Some asked careful questions about where Adelaide had been, and she answered honestly, explaining about the brother who had threatened Yates, about the years in Boston. She did not go into all the painful details, but she told enough that people understood. "You are very brave," one of the older women said, patting Adelaide's hand. "To go through all that and still find your way back, that takes real courage." "I had something worth coming back to," Adelaide replied, looking at Yates. They stayed at the reception until the sun began to set, dancing and eating and laughing with the people of Rawlins. It felt like a new beginning, like the life they had been meant to have was finally starting. When they left, riding back to the ranch under a sky full of stars, Adelaide leaned her head against Yates's back and sighed contentedly. "Happy?" he asked. "Happier than I have been in 3 years. Happier than I thought I could be. Good. Because I plan to spend the rest of my life making you even happier." The months that followed were the best of Yates's life. He and Adelaide fell into an easy routine on the ranch, working side by side to manage the cattle and the land. Adelaide proved to be a natural with the animals, and she loved the wide, open spaces of Wyoming, so different from the cramped streets of Boston. She started a vegetable garden behind the house, planting seeds she ordered from a catalog, and spent hours tending it, watching things grow under the big sky. The town continued to accept her back gradually. She started helping at the school again, not as the main teacher but as an assistant, working with the younger children. The parents who had once questioned her loyalty saw how dedicated she was, how much she cared about their children's education, and their doubts faded. Yates found himself smiling constantly, something he had not done in years. Every morning he woke up next to Adelaide, still half disbelieving that she was really there, really his. Every evening they sat on the porch together, talking about their day, making plans for the future. They talked about expanding the house, about getting more land, about the children they hoped to have someday. Winter came hard and fast to Wyoming that year, blanketing the ranch in snow and driving the cattle into the sheltered valleys. Yates worked long hours keeping the animals fed and alive, often coming home exhausted and covered in ice. But Adelaide always had the fire going, hot coffee waiting, and a warm meal on the table. She would help him out of his frozen clothes and wrap him in blankets, rubbing warmth back into his hands. "I could not do this without you," he told her one particularly brutal night, when the wind howled outside and the cold seemed to seep through every crack in the walls. "You did do it without me for 3 years, and it nearly killed me, not the work, the loneliness." He pulled her close, feeling her heartbeat against his. "You make everything worthwhile, Adelaide, even the hard days." "Good, because I intend to be here for all the days, hard and easy alike." Spring came eventually, melting the snow and turning the grasslands green. The cattle grew fat on the new grass, and the ranch prospered. Yates hired another hand, a young man named Marcus who worked hard and asked few questions. The ranch was doing better than ever, producing calves that fetched good prices at market. It was a warm day in May when Adelaide told him the news. They were sitting on the porch after dinner, watching the sunset, and she took his hand and placed it on her stomach. "I am pregnant, Yates. We are going to have a baby." He stared at her, the words taking a moment to sink in. Then joy exploded through him, so intense it almost hurt. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight but careful, suddenly terrified of hurting her or the child. "Are you certain?" "As certain as I can be." "I have suspected for a few weeks, but I wanted to be sure before I told you." She was crying happy tears, laughing through them. "We are going to be parents. A baby." Yates felt like his heart might burst. "We are going to have a baby." They talked late into the night, making plans and dreaming. They would need to prepare a nursery, buy supplies, find someone to help with the birth since the nearest doctor was in town. Yates wanted to wrap Adelaide in cotton wool and protect her from everything, but she laughed and told him she was pregnant, not fragile. "Women have been doing this since the beginning of time, Yates. I will be fine." "I know, but I worry. I cannot help it." "Then worry a little, but not too much. I need you to be strong for both of us." The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the summer and into the fall. Adelaide glowed with health, her belly growing round and her happiness evident. The townspeople knitted baby clothes and gave advice, and Mrs. Patterson appointed herself as Adelaide's unofficial midwife, having delivered half the babies in Rawlins over the years. "You are going to do just fine, dear," she assured Adelaide during one of her visits to the ranch. "You are strong and healthy, and that baby is going to be just perfect." Yates tried not to be too overprotective, but it was difficult. He found himself watching Adelaide constantly, making sure she did not lift anything heavy or work too hard. She tolerated his fussing with good humor, teasing him about turning into an old mother hen. The baby came on a cold night in January of 1884, arriving 3 days earlier than expected. Adelaide's labor started just after sunset, and Yates sent Marcus racing into town to fetch Mrs. Patterson and the doctor. The hours that followed were the longest of Yates's life, pacing outside the bedroom while Mrs. Patterson and the doctor worked. He could hear Adelaide crying out in pain, and it took everything in him not to burst through the door. Finally, just as dawn was breaking, he heard a different sound, the thin, angry wail of a newborn baby. Yates stopped pacing, his heart hammering. A moment later, Mrs. Patterson emerged, grinning. "You have a son, Yates, a healthy baby boy, and Adelaide is doing wonderfully." Yates did not wait to hear more. He pushed past her into the bedroom where Adelaide lay exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in blankets. She looked up as he entered, her face streaked with tears and sweat, and smiled. "Come meet your son." Yates approached slowly, almost reverently. He looked down at the baby, at the tiny scrunched face and the shock of dark hair, and felt his world tilt on its axis. This was his child. His and Adelaide's. A perfect, miraculous combination of both of them. "He is beautiful," Yates whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "You are both beautiful. Do you want to hold him?" Yates nodded, unable to speak. Adelaide placed the baby carefully in his arms, showing him how to support the head. The infant was so small, so impossibly fragile, and Yates felt a surge of protectiveness so fierce it took his breath away. "Hello, little one," he murmured. "I am your father. And I promise you, I am going to love you and protect you every single day of your life." The baby opened his eyes, dark blue and unfocused, and seemed to look right at him. Yates felt tears spill down his cheeks, happy tears that he made no effort to hide. "What should we name him?" Adelaide asked softly. "What about Samuel, after my grandfather, Samuel Randall?" "Samuel." Adelaide tested the name, then nodded. "I like it. Samuel Randall, our son." They stayed like that for a long time, the three of them together in the quiet of the early morning, while outside the ranch began to wake and a new day dawned over Wyoming. It was the beginning of their new life, the family they had both dreamed of and nearly lost. The years that followed were full and rich and happy. Samuel grew into a sturdy, curious boy who loved the ranch and followed Yates everywhere, learning how to care for the cattle and ride before he could barely walk. 2 years after Samuel came another child, a daughter they named Rose, who had Adelaide's dark hair and Yates's blue eyes. She was quieter than her brother, but just as determined, and she wrapped her father around her tiny finger from the moment she was born. The ranch continued to prosper, growing into one of the most successful in the territory. Yates hired more hands, expanded the herds, bought more land. Adelaide continued to teach, working with the children in town several days a week, beloved by students and parents alike. They built an addition onto the house, adding more bedrooms and a proper parlor, filling it with warmth and laughter and love. On warm summer evenings, they still sat on the porch together, watching the sunset and talking about their days. The children would play in the yard, chasing fireflies and shrieking with joy, and Yates would pull Adelaide close and marvel at the life they had built together. "You ever think about how close we came to losing all this?" Adelaide asked one such evening when Samuel was 7 and Rose was 5, and they were expecting their third child. "Every day," Yates admitted. "Every single day I thank God you came back, that you were brave enough to return. I had to. A life without you was no life at all." She rested her head on his shoulder. "I am so grateful for all of this, Yates, for you, for our children, for this beautiful life we have. We earned it. We fought for it." He kissed the top of her head. "And I would fight for it again and again for as long as I live." Their third child, another boy they named Thomas, arrived that fall. He was followed 3 years later by twin girls, Emma and Grace, who kept the entire household in chaos and laughter. The house that had once seemed so empty and quiet was now constantly full of noise and activity. Children running through the rooms, Adelaide cooking and teaching and organizing, Yates coming in from the ranch to find his children climbing on him like a tree. As the children grew, Yates told them the story of how he and Adelaide met, how they fell in love, and how they lost each other and found their way back. He wanted them to understand that love was worth fighting for, that sometimes the path was difficult but the destination was worth every struggle. "Your mother is the bravest person I know," he told them. "She faced terrible things to protect me, and then she found her way back across half a continent to make things right. That is real courage. That is real love." Adelaide would blush when he said such things, but she never denied them. She told the children her own version of the story, emphasizing the importance of honesty and trust, of not letting fear make your decisions for you. "If I had trusted your father from the beginning," she said, "we could have faced my brother together. We lost 3 years because I was too afraid to ask for help. Learn from my mistakes, my darlings. The people who love you want to help you, want to protect you. Let them." The children absorbed these lessons, growing into kind and confident young people. Samuel became a rancher like his father, taking over more and more of the daily operations as Yates aged. Rose became a teacher like Adelaide, opening a school in town for older children. Thomas went east to study veterinary medicine, returning to practice in Rawlins. The twins married local boys and started families of their own, settling on nearby ranches. Through it all, Yates and Adelaide remained the center of the family, their love the foundation on which everything else was built. They grew old together on the ranch, watching their children grow and their grandchildren arrive, and they never took a single day for granted. On their 30th wedding anniversary, the whole family gathered at the ranch for a celebration. There were grandchildren running everywhere, food covering every surface, laughter and music filling the air. Yates stood on the porch, watching the chaos with a contented smile, when Adelaide joined him. "Quite a crowd," she observed, slipping her hand into his. Her hair was gray now, and there were lines around her eyes, but to Yates she was still the most beautiful woman in the world. "Our legacy," he said. "All these people, all this love, it exists because you came back to me, because you were brave enough to try again." "We were brave enough," Adelaide corrected. "You could have turned me away, you could have refused to listen. But you did not. You gave us another chance, best decision I ever made." Yates pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her temple. "I love you, Adelaide Randall. I have loved you since the moment I met you, and I will love you until the day I die. And I love you, Yates, always and forever." They stood there together, surrounded by the family and the life they had built, and Yates felt complete. The pain of those 3 lost years had faded, replaced by the joy of the decades they had shared since. Adelaide had come back to him, had given him the explanation he deserved, and together they had created something beautiful and lasting. As the sun set over the Wyoming grasslands, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Yates held his wife and thought about the long journey that had brought them to this moment. It had not been easy. There had been heartbreak and separation, fear and pain, but they had persevered. They had fought for their love, and in the end, love had won. Inside the house, someone started playing a fiddle and the music drifted out onto the porch. Adelaide smiled and tugged at Yates's hand. "Dance with me, always." He took her in his arms, and they swayed together to the music, moving in the comfortable rhythm of 30 years of marriage. Around them, their children and grandchildren watched and smiled, seeing the love that had endured despite everything, the bond that had survived separation and doubt and time itself. And as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, one by one, Yates Randall held his wife close and knew with absolute certainty that he was the luckiest man who had ever lived. Adelaide had left him without a word, breaking his heart in ways he had thought irreparable, but she had come back. She had explained. She had fought for them, and so had he. And together, they had built a life more wonderful than either of them could have imagined on that dusty September day in 1882, when she stepped off the stagecoach and back into his world. Their love story had been tested by forces beyond their control, by fear and violence and circumstances that would have destroyed a lesser bond. But they had emerged stronger, their love deepened by the trials they had faced. The years of separation had only made them more grateful for the time they had together, more determined to cherish every moment. As the celebration continued around them, as their family laughed and danced and made memories of their own, Yates and Adelaide remained in each other's arms on the porch, right where they belonged. The Wild West had been harsh and unforgiving, full of dangers and uncertainties. But it had also given them each other, and in the end, that was all that mattered. The music played on into the night, carrying across the grasslands and up into the vast Wyoming sky, a testament to love found, lost, and found again, to second chances and the courage to take them, to 2 people who refused to let go of what they knew in their hearts was true. And somewhere in the darkness, the wind whispered through the grass, carrying their story forward into the years to come, a reminder that real love, the kind worth fighting for, never truly dies. It endures, it persists, and given the chance, it blooms again, more beautiful than ever before.